Show on ATLTalks with your hosts, GB3 and Jerome Boateng. The GB3 Show gives you the latest news and updates inside the NBA. Now, let's get into it. Here are your hosts, GB3 and Jerome.
What's up, guys? You are now tuned into the GB3 Show here on ATLTalks Radio. It is 9 a.m. at the top of the hour. I hope everyone is enjoying their fabulous Saturday morning so far. Make sure that you tune into the show on iHeartRadio, ATLTalks Radio, or download the ATLTalks Radio app for your mobile devices on the App Store or on Google Play. And if you do have an iPhone and you're in your car, you can tune into ATLTalks Radio on Apple CarPlay. So we have a lot of things to discuss today, and at 9:30 we will have back a very special guest, Mr. Pat Benson. We will discuss topics as far as the Hawks, how their season is going, and trade rumors, and how the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Orlando Magic are doing. They're off to a fantastic start this year, but that'll be later on in the show. I do have my right-hand man with me, Mr. Jerome Boateng. How you doing, my man?
Oh, man, I'm doing really good. Sound much better. And, great news. The Hawks scored 299 points in their last two games. Of course, that means we won both of them, right? Right?
Technically, I mean, you should, but then again, technically.
Ain't no way we lost both of those games, man, because, look, when you put up 152 in one night and then 147, that automatically means a two-game win streak. But as we're going to get into, man, the Hawks, like most years, their offense is definitely clicking, but the defense has been very slow out the gates as well. They're looking a lot like they've looked the past 2 years. I think 2 years ago, we were second in offensive efficiency and 27th in defense. And we ended up just being a 9th seed, 43-win team. And this year, we're second in offensive efficiency, 26th in defense. And right now, there's a lot of things you can say about the team, whether it's a double-sided coin. You can talk about how Trae Young has really came on these last couple of games, and it looks like he's finally starting to have it click. But also, man, it's looking like we have a defensive rebounding problem, because I'll give them credence where a lot of the teams we played early on, like the Knicks, Magic, the Bucks, the New Orleans Pelicans, they've really put an onus on offensive rebounding. So, of course, our offensive rebounding numbers aren't going to be great. But at the same time, man, when you want to look at why our defense has been so iffy, it's been the fact that we give up way too many second chance points. And I think that is a much bigger issue, and that is an issue that can really be extended if the Hawks aren't able to get it together. That, more than anything, is why I'm looking at this defense as very suspect right now. If you can't really get if you can't get defensive rebounds, then the team's just going to eventually have multiple chances at scoring the ball when they get all those shots going. And that's essentially what I think's happening right now, man. But I like how the offense does look. I do have to give the Hawks credit for beating the Nets, too, because that was the second half of a back-to-back after that track meet, that all-star game they played against the Pacers, where they lost 157 to 152. How do you allow 157 points in regulation? That is insane. But
well, not just that, but yeah, to your point, yeah, that was, even though that we lost that game against the Pacers, and I'm still upset about that game because we had a 20-point lead. Mm-hmm. And I get it. In this league, it's all about a game of runs, and I get it. Teams are going to make runs and things of that nature to try to make it a game and try to win it. But when you're up 20 points, that's when you have to put those teams away, and that's when you have full control. And there's no excuse about that, period. And like I said, yeah, teams are going to make their runs, but still, when you have a 20-point lead like that, you have to take control of the game. And we lost by 5. And then, as you mentioned, that was a back-to-back game because we played the Nets the following game. we had a 15-point lead in that game. And then at one point, and then that game is starting to get close towards the end. We still could have won the game without going to overtime, but Trey at the end, he got fouled and he missed one of his 2 free throws, which sent that game to overtime. And we did come up with a big win. Trey did hit a clutch shot for us to take the lead, and then Okongwu, he did come up with the biggest play of the game with a shot block against Mikal Bridges, because Mikal Bridges, he was cooking us in that game, man. He had plus 40 points in that game. And he was, 45, and he was unstoppable. And so Okongwu, he did come up with that big block there, and we were able to secure the win. So, I mean, I get it that, the team, they're still learning about each other, even though this is pretty much the same team we've had last year. But when you're under a new system and a new coach and things of that nature, yes, it's going to take time for guys to develop, and that's understandable. But and we know that this team needs more improvement, not just internally, but from a transactional standpoint, where, okay, like you mentioned, offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding. And the Hawks, they could have gotten a lot more control in this game against the Nets if they were more disciplined on the rebounding standpoint.
If a forward boxed out, like, that's just box out.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, and again, I mean, even earlier in this season, the Hawks were doing pretty well on their rebounding, at least during that point in time. I think with our first few games, I mean, we were able to get solid rebounds and make it a game. And to my understanding, I can't remember which game it was, but I think it may have been the Minnesota game where we were down by plus 20 or less.
Yeah,
and we were in Minnesota, they have a lot of size with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, and it's not just because DJ took over that game, but we were able to, get rebounds and get out and run. Mm-hmm. But as of late, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, right now the Hawks are 25th in the league in defensive rebounding. In offensive rebounding, they're actually 4th in the league. So they do a good job of getting second chance points themselves, which is explaining why they were able to score a lot in the past 2 games. So offensive wise, it still looks good. But, one of the big things I'm noticing is, it's really a lot to do with Quinn Snyder's system and how he has the big men. He has Okongwu and Capella playing on the perimeter defensively a lot more. And I understand why he would do that, especially for a guy like Okongwu who's more comfortable in that setting on defense. But when you have those guys not playing at the rim, it means that the forwards really have to make an effort to try to get more rebounds. It means DeAndre Hunter has to do more than just 4 rebounds a game, which he's averaged pretty much his whole career. It means Sadiq Bey has to really put an effort into getting those rebounds on the defensive end. He's strong enough to do that. The only forward we got that really does make a difference on the boards is Jalen Johnson. Yep. He's able to do all those little things and play that tough defense and box out like he needs to. And his size definitely does help. But as long as the forwards really aren't getting boards like that, we're going to see more of these bad defensive rebounding numbers, and we're going to see more teams get all these second chance points because Clint Capella is just not going to be at the rim to just gobble up every single defensive board. He'll be there on offense, but defensive wise, it's really on the forwards. And this is another part of just getting used to his coaching system, Quinn Snyder's coaching system. And, the 7-7 start, it's a lot like what Utah Jazz's teams were, where early in the season they would kind of get off to iffy starts, but then around January, February, they'd kind of take off once the players really settled in. And that's what you're hoping for when it comes to the Hawks. But these are the real kinks that have to be worked out. And what it's going to look like sometimes is giving up 157 points in 4 quarters against the Pacers. And I don't know, that game in particular, it just seemed like any time the Hawks needed a stop to just stop the bleeding, they could not get that stop whatsoever.
I mean, with Tyrese Halliburton, don't get me wrong, he's one of the best point guards in the league. But man, 9 3-pointers, and some of those shots where you just can't do anything about it. But then there were some where it's like, okay, we have to do a better job of defending the 3-point line. Mm-hmm. So I mean, with the team, and again, we still have a top 10 offense, and we're actually more than that. We've been in the top 5, top 6
Our
in the
offense
offensive
is
rating.
amazing right now.
Yeah, so the offense has never been an issue. And hey, look, if there's any other ways for the offense to be better, where we can be top 3, top 4, top 5, top 6, I mean, I'll take that any given night. So the offense is not the issue. It's just defensively, we just have not been able to get any stops. And I don't want to be one of those people that say, hey, we need to start looking for trades or whatever it takes for this team to be better defensively. And this team has a lot of potential, but I think what it all comes down to is, and I don't know, I think this is one of the reasons why Quinn Snyder wanted to take the job as early as he did last year, to evaluate the guys, to see what he has, and for everybody to come back to see what he can do. And even on Twitter, you know, people, or X rather, have mentioned about DeAndre Hunter. Now, against the Nets, he had a really good game. He had 25 points and 11 boards. But you don't see that on a consistent basis. So you can see Dre putting those kinds of numbers, and then, I don't know, we play against the Washington Wizards tonight. I mean, he may have another good game because the Wizards, they are terrible. They're 2-13 or whatever the record is. But again, you don't see that kind of consistency from DeAndre Hunter. He could put up those kinds of numbers in the next game. He could put up, I don't know, 10 and 5. And if this team is going to have any chance of making a deep run into playoffs, you're going to need a lot more consistency from everybody. And so, like I said, but I mean, the issues that the Hawks have, they may not be able to fix everything, but as far as the defensive rebounding, I think they can do a lot better job than that. Because to your point, that I mean, if you're going to grab a rebound, all you have to do is just box out. You know, put bias on bias, and then fight for the rebound. And again, they have guys that can do that. But when you're giving these teams other opportunities to score, then you're going to find yourself in a hole that you're not going to be able to dig yourself out of.
No reason 6'8", 7'2" wingspan DeAndre Hunter can't get more than 4 rebounds a night. No reason Sadiq Bey, one of the strongest dudes on the team, can't box out and get a defensive rebound. When it comes to DeAndre Hunter too, it's like, hey, look, I'm glad he chose Brooklyn. I'm glad he chose Wednesday to have his 125-point game per month, because he'll do that once a month, and then he's going to go right back to his shell. He's going to go right back to getting 6 to 12 points a night, not really giving you too much on the rebounding end. He averaging just as many turnovers as assists and giving you average defense. I'm one of those people that is just kind of done with DeAndre Hunter at this point. I do think at some point, if he's not going to give you the rebounding that you need, then you need to go out and look for a forward that can do that, and that can be a much better player within the system than DeAndre Hunter is, because the man's already 26. All right. He's only ever given you 2 solid months of being the legit top 5 player that he should be. That was the 2 months in the 2020-2021 season before he got hurt. He played really good at that moment, but once he got hurt for pretty much that whole year, he's been the same average player. That's just what he is. So, he'll give you a game like he did against Brooklyn, and we definitely needed all 25 of those points. But I just don't have faith he can really do that consistently. I've seen him not be able to do that consistently and go back into his shell and not play as aggressively as we need him to. And until the Hawks just figure that out, that they need to just try to make a move for him, I don't have too much faith that these rebounding numbers are really going to pick up. Maybe if Quinn Snyder wants to play Wes Matthews a bit more, because at least Matthews, when he gets the ball,
I would love Wesley Matthews to get more minutes. And yes, I get it. He's just starting to get back into shape because he's been, out with injuries and stuff. But the times he has been in the lineup, I mean, for a guy at his age, he can still play offensively. He can shoot, and he's come up with a lot of big shots in the games he's played thus far. And defensively, he brings a lot of energy and physicality, and he's doing that more than guys like Sadiq Bey and DeAndre Hunter. I mean, he's all up in these guys' face and making them think and things of that nature. And like I said, Wesley Matthews, he's going to make this team a lot better, and depending on how Quinn Snyder utilizes him, because he didn't play last game against Brooklyn. So, and I think he did play against the Pacers, but I don't know. Maybe this team needs a an adjustment when it comes to the rotation where, okay, yeah, you start DeAndre Hunter, but then you may want to close out some games with Wesley Matthews. I'm just hypothetically speaking because, I mean, whatever's working for the team, that's what you should roll with. And so, but yeah, to your point, DeAndre Hunter, I mean, as I mentioned, I mean, you were picked in the top 4 in the draft. And again, like I said, he had a great game against Brooklyn, but then if you're not bringing that kind of production on a night-to-night basis, because who knows if DeAndre Hunter was putting up these kinds of numbers, we probably be a top four seed team easily. So yeah, it's gonna be difficult.
One more thing I do want to mention though, Trae Young last 2 games, he did score 81 points. He's been going off. He's pulled his 3-point efficiency out of the gutter. And do you think this play can stick, or did we see the kind of corner turn for Trae Young? Because if so, I think it's possible that the offense continues to look as good as it did. I almost think it's kind of impossible for the defense to keep giving up 150 and 140, right? But if the offense can kind of keep up the steady pace like this, and Trae Young can, do you think that this can kind of stick?
Hey man, look, I mean, he's off to a fantastic start, and I do recall when Lloyd Pierce was the head coach of the Hawks, where Trae. It's not going to be just based off of the numbers, but what he's doing on the court determines if he's gotten better. So, for example, he may not be averaging 30 points a night, but I had to check the numbers. But if he's averaging 20,
he's averaging 26 currently.
Yeah, 26, but he's averaging 11 assists, right? Yeah, 11 assists. So yeah, that's what I thought. So I mean, even though that he's not putting up a lot of points offensively, but again, it's not about how many points he's scoring, but how he's scoring is the difference. And like you mentioned, with his 3-point shooting, has gotten a lot better. And to his point, meaning Trae, he's even said before that, hey, he's been working on that all season, all off season, and it's paid off for real. And even against the Indiana Pacers, I do want to take the time to congratulate Trae Young because he did surpass Joe Johnson with the second most 3-pointers made in franchise history at 909. And Mookie Blaylock is the leading 3-pointers made in franchise history. And if Trae keeps that up, then
he's going to pass that.
Yeah, so, sure. I mean, he still got ways to go, but if he keeps this up, then, yeah, he'll definitely get it. But, yeah, I think with Trae, just continue to do what he does, just continue to shoot the threes, and I think that's where he's, I wouldn't say at best because he can do other things well, but definitely with the 3-point shooting, if he continues to do that, then, and of course everybody else, then yeah, this is definitely going to be great. But it's just the defense that has to tighten up.
I will say now, defense has been looking better this year. I'm not going to get into the specific advanced numbers, but he's played at somewhat of a neutral kind of defense so far out of all the top guards, and he's gotten a steal in every single game this year. He's averaging 1.7 steals a night. That's
normal, almost 2.
Yeah, that's definitely nothing to sugarcoat there. That shows that he's at least given a lot more effort. And heck, as bad as the defense has been these past 2 games, Trae has looked like one of the more active defenders than, most of the players on the team. He's getting a lot of tips. He's going for a lot of steals, and just the little things like that is really what we need from Trae. We don't expect him to be a great defender, but I do got to give him his props. He has looked a lot better, and you definitely cannot say that he's one of the worst defenders in the league. I think that's really over-exaggerating, and it would show that you really haven't been watching too much, and it's going to be really hard for him to shake that reputation, but the defense this year has been really good for a person like him with his size especially.
And I said this to people before that from your point guard, you're not really expecting your point guard to play elite defense. Right. I mean, if you have a guy like Drew Holiday or Marcus Smart that plays elite defense, then that's a plus. But if you're putting effort from the point guard position, then hey, you're in great shape. And he's been playing very well defensively, and that's all you can ask for. So yeah, if he's averaging that many, a steal, averaging a steal per night or getting a steal per night, then that's great effort. And so, and there was a play where he was guarding against Mikal Bridges, and he was putting up, great defense on that sequence. So
Tyrese Halliburton, like right before the missed layup DeJounte Murray had at the end of the Pacers game, the person that got the stop and ended up getting the steal was Trae Young, that led to that fast break opportunity. So even his defense, it is translating into clutch moments too.
Yeah. So, when we come back, we'll continue to discuss more of the Hawks. And at 9:30, we will have our special guest, Pat Benson, on the show with us, and we'll talk more with him as well. So, don't go anywhere. So keep it locked right here on ATLTalks Radio. This is the GB3 show. You are now tuned into the GB3 show here on ATL Talks Radio. It is 9:24, and in a few minutes we'll have our special guest Pat Benson on with us to discuss more Hawks and other things such as the trade rumors involving Zach LaVine, Alex Caruso, and Patrick Williams, and also talk about the Orlando Magic and the Minnesota Timberwolves off their fantastic starts. And so with the Hawks, as me and Jerome were talking about before, I mean, there's a lot of things that needs to be improved on this team, but as we mentioned about their defensive rebounding and things of that nature, all those things can be fixed. And I'm not expecting this team to have an elite defense, because I say this to many people that the way the roster is constructed, it's not meant to stop anybody. And I'm just keeping it 100 here. Now, again, the defense can be a lot better, because defense is all about effort. And so if our guys continue to learn the system that Quinn Snyder is implementing with everybody, and everybody continuing to know their roles and how they need to play on both sides of the floor, then this team is going to be in better shape. And this team can be a top 4 seeded team or top 5. But again, I mean, you have other teams like Miami, the Knicks, who are good teams still. And
Miami, man.
I mean,
they never stop.
They never stop. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Jerome, because that game against Miami that we played, I mean, look, and as I said before, Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches of all time, and no matter who they have on the floor, they are still a tough team because their defense is so elite. I mean, we had so many turnovers and we weren't able to capitalize offensively. And that's one thing that I hope to see with this team in Quinn Snyder at some point, that they're able to find something where they can score effectively, because they weren't able to get anything. Yeah, that was just crazy. But
no Jimmy Butler, and we still lost. But hey, that's Eric Spoelstra for you, you know.
Yeah, he's done a great job. But
as far as the defense goes, though, I will say the last 2 games were kind of the perfect storm for something like that to happen. Because we look at the Pacers and the Brooklyn Nets, they're built in very similar ways to the Hawks. Both teams play super fast. They play a lot of good offense, and neither team's defense has been that good either. So I don't know if we're going to get this perfect storm of just 2 teams who just run the floor, and it's going to be a track meet, and it's going to be, you know, first to 150 wins. But I will say, like, you know, I do expect the defense to be a little bit better, just because something like the last 2 nights has literally never happened in NBA history, where you score and allow 140 points. So I expect the Hawks to regress back to the mean when it comes to defense and slightly offensively. But, you know, this is a team that is built for offense. Quinn Snyder said himself in the last press conference that we got 53-point shots up against Brooklyn, and he said he wants to see that every single game. So this is going to be a team that tries to put up a lot of points, that plays super fast, and there's just going to be certain nights where other teams play just as fast and put up just as many points, and you're going to get what we got here.
And that's why I say it's always going to come down to who gets more defensive stops and who's better on the boards, and that's what it comes down to. And that pretty much validates the point I'm trying to make against Indiana, where, I mean, each team put up 150 plus points each, and it all came down to who were getting stops. And like I said, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton, he was I mean, he had 9 3-pointers, but like I said, they were able to get stops down the stretch, and or at least for Atlanta, we weren't getting the stops that we need because we were down by 20, and then they came back and won by 5. So
yeah,
but I mean, and as I said, I mean, and even looking at the Hawks schedule, I mean, they're going up against tough teams.
It's a lot of road games coming up, 2-3 in a row. And, we're definitely going to get a lot more into it as we get into this Pat Benson interview as well, man. But glad to hear him coming back, and we're about to get into it right now.
You are now tuned into the GB3 show here on ATLTalks Radio. We have Pat Benson with us here. He is a senior writer for Fan Nation Kicks and journalist for Sports Illustrated. How you doing, Pat?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be on talking the Hawks again with you.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we're going to jump right into it, Pat. So, we're 14 games in. The team is, right at 500, 7-7. They are coming off of a win against the Brooklyn Nets, 147-145. So, Pat, we just wanted to get your thoughts on the team, thus far. I mean, they're playing average. They do have an elite offense. I think we can say that they have a top 10 offense, but this season they've been, in the top 5, top 6. So, but the defense has just been atrocious. And I mean, we can look at the game against Brooklyn where they had a 15-point lead and that game had to go into overtime. And even the game before then, they had a 20-point lead against the Pacers, but they were able to get stops and they, came back and won by 5. So what are your thoughts on the team thus far? Is this how you expected the team to play, or do you feel like, a lot of changes has to be made, in regards to maybe a trade or a rotation, wise?
Yeah. So I think Hawks fans are understandably kind of upset. In some ways, it kind of reminds us of that 21-22 team with Gallinari and Herter, where the offense was through the roof, but we just couldn't play any defense. And also, you look at the record, as you brought up, 7-7. Just painfully mid at this point in time. And we all remember that statistic floating around last year, where it's like, over the past 100 games, the Hawks are 50-50. And, I get all that. But this team is better than those previous teams. If you pop the hood and you look at the advanced metrics, like, they are better. It's just right now it isn't equating to wins. I think Trey had a little bit of a slump, and, it just hasn't worked out in terms of wins yet, but this team is better, and I'm remaining optimistic.
Yes, sir. And this is Jerome Boateng coming from you from the GB3 show, Pat. And one time I do remember hearing Mike Conley back when Quinn Snyder was on the Utah Jazz, and he stated that Quinn Snyder's system is like you got to learn how to have a PhD for it. And, we've also seen the Utah Jazz kind of come out the kind of slow-ish starts in the past with Quinn Snyder, and then around January, February kind of pick it up. So do you think that can definitely happen with the Hawks as well as we get into the later months of the season?
Yeah, as long as all the players are buying in, then yeah, that's most important. And right now, all of them are Trey, DeJounte, all the team's leaders, Clint, they're all buying into a system. So that's what's most important. I think about this time last year, we were already seeing cracks in the foundation between Trey and Nate McMillan. I think by this point in time, they were starting to have their public feuds. And we all remember, that one practice that resulted in Trey not showing up to the game that night. It seems like everybody's really buying into his system, which is important. And it does take time to get used to a new coach and new sets and, all that. So, yeah, I could see this team improving as the season goes on, just, getting some more time to gel and to figure out that new system.
Yeah, and speaking of Trey, a lot of people have mentioned a lot of people are talking about his efficiency and pointing just toward that as to why he's not playing that great. I'm willing to make the argument that other than his efficiency, he's been a lot more well-rounded. His passing is as good as ever. And even defensively, he's gotten a steal in every single game he's played this year. And he's averaging 1.7 steals. His defensive EPM is at 0.3. And it's been more neutral than most years. So what is your assessment of how Trey has played despite his low efficiency so far?
I couldn't have said it any better than you just did. I think, yeah, obviously his shot has been a little bit off, but his defense has been so much better, and his overall game is much better rounded than it was previously. So it seems like we keep moving the field goal posts on Trey. Like, for years, like, we got onto him about his defense, and like that, like, was what opposing fan bases would always point to, but now he's improved that. So now we're going to, pick on other parts of his game. So I think he's playing much better. His shots will fall. Like, his averages, his shooting percentages will eventually go towards the average, towards the mean. And but overall, he's absolutely better all around, and I expect for him his shooting to continue to pick up. We've seen him have a few outbursts this season, and he'll continue to have some hot nights.
And Pat, just to circle back on the Hawks defense, and I said this to many people, that this team, the way the roster is constructed, is not meant to stop anybody, but of course it can always be improved. And so far, as of right now, there have been rumors about, the Bulls. They're off to a bad start. I believe when they lost their first 3 games, they had a players' meeting. So it's looking bad in Chicago. And, of course, the rumors with Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, and Alex Caruso. I mean, it's feasible that the Bulls could be looking towards a fire sale. But I think that if the Hawks want to improve their defense, whether if they want to do that internally or if they want to do that in a transactional way, I think that getting a guy like Alex Caruso would be something that they could really use, in terms of their perimeter defense. So do you think that Alex Caruso would be a target that the Hawks could make by the trade deadline? And if so, what do you think the price tag would be for a guy like him?
Yeah, so I think Caruso is a much more realistic target than LaVine. I know we all love like the flashy all-star caliber players, but I just think that price tag would be too much. I'm not sure what the package would entail for Caruso. I'm sure it'd have to probably include DeAndre Hunter, perhaps Sadiq Bey's expiring contract. I don't know. But, I think Caruso would be a more realistic target. I'm sure he's one of many names that Atlanta's front office is monitoring, from now through the first week of February. So, keep an eye on Chicago, as it looks like they could be heading for a teardown or a rebuild.
And when you look at the standings in the Eastern Conference, I mean, yes, it's still early in the season. We're almost, the first quarter of the season. But when you're looking at these teams out in the West, Minnesota, they're the first seed. And then you look at the Magic, they're coming off a big win against the Celtics, and they're second in the East at 11-5. So how do you think that these guys are playing? Do you think that this is something where it's like, okay, we need to take these teams seriously? Or do you think that, well, it's early in the season, let's give it, a few more games to see where these teams are at? Because, they're off to a fantastic start so far.
It's painfully early in the season right now, so I'm not surprised that some of these young upstart teams, like the Thunder, like the Timberwolves, like the Magic, are jumping out to an early start. Let's give it several weeks. Let's give it a few months. And then I think you're going to see the more veteran-laden teams like out west, the Nuggets, the Suns, the Warriors, the Lakers. I think we'll start seeing them go back towards the top of the standings. And then the Eastern Conference, I'm confident that it'll be Celtics, Bucks, 76ers near the top. So I'm not surprised that the young teams are jumping out to a hot start. Let's see if they can maintain that. Right now, I remain pretty confident they will not.
And I just want to circle back real quick to the Atlanta Hawks. Right now, especially over these last 2 games, the defense has been a major point of emphasis. And one thing that I've noticed is that we're 25th in defensive rebounds so far. We're giving up a lot of second chance points to these teams. And granted, we've played teams like the Knicks, the Orlando Magic, the Pelicans, the Milwaukee Bucks, teams that really focus a lot on their offensive rebounding. But so far, when you point at why the defense has been so up and down and bad, it's really that defensive rebounding stat. They've been really low with that. And, I look at how Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu, they have to play more at the perimeter. perimeter. So really, I think it's more so on the forwards to get the rebounds. Like DeAndre Hunter and Sadiq Bey just have to do a little bit more. So in your eyes, what can the Hawks do to get that defensive rebounding number up? Because I think that will definitely improve the defense a lot more than it has.
Yeah, so defensive rebounding, second chance points in the paint, that can definitely kill you. And there are a bunch of different variables, like perhaps, like you said, our post players are out around the perimeter. Maybe some of our guards are, getting back, and that could lead to why we have the third highest pace of play in the league and second in points per game. So there are a lot of different variables. Yeah, I agree. Forwards could do a better job rebounding. DeAndre Hunter has never rebounded at a high rate. So I'd say there are a lot of different variables that could cause that, but obviously you can't get killed on the boards and expect to, keep your opponent's points per game at a reasonable amount. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but that's definitely a point of concern.
Yeah, man. And earlier you were talking about young teams getting off to a good start like the OKC Thunder, and one player in particular that has really gotten off to a great start, that's Chet Holmgren, and he's been outpacing Victor Wembanyama for Rookie of the Year so far, with 17 points a night and with splits of 55 from the field, 40% from three, 90% from the free throw line, and he's averaging 2.3 blocks too. So all around, Chet Holmgren's playing really well. It's super early in the year, but is this something that he can keep up and potentially steal that Rookie of the Year award that a lot of people just had penciled in for Victor Wembanyama?
Yeah, I think Chet is the real deal. He's definitely capable of doing it. And, I think I bought into the hype big time on Wembanyama, which is still real because I'll ask my friends who are more serious journalists than I am around the league, and they tell me to chill. They're like, Wembanyama will improve. He is doing all the right things. He's serious about his work ethic. You just got to give him more time. So I don't know if I'm ready to give Holmgren, my vote of confidence that he will win Rookie of the Year. I could see Wembanyama coming along. But yeah, Holmgren's a very solid player, and I think we're going to have a really solid Western Conference rivalry between Holmgren and Wembanyama for years to come. So that's exciting. And, we'll see what happens with Rookie of the Year. I remain bullish. I still think it could be Wembanyama, despite Holmgren really playing out of his mind.
And Pat, one last question before we let you go. So the Hawks, they have officially been eliminated from the in-season tournament. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on the in-season tournament itself, because it seems like teams all around the league, they do like it. It brings them a more competitive spirit around the league. And of course, for the fans, they do want to see those kind of things. And even though the Hawks, they didn't, really win the games that they should have won, but overall, just in the in-season tournament, what do you think of it, and do you think this is something that the league should continue?
Yeah, I don't care that the Hawks got eliminated. I care about the playoffs. I care about the Larry O'Brien trophy.
Absolutely.
They can keep the in-season tournament championships. Obviously, it's good for the league. It's brought a level of excitement and enthusiasm. The players have bought into it, which is most importantly, because if they treated it like the All-Star game or the regular season tournament, we'd have problems. So obviously it's sticking around, and I'm sure whichever team wins it, they're going to really take a victory lap. But personally, if you want my personal opinion, I don't care.
Yes, sir. And Pat, one more question for me as well. And earlier this season, actually about 4 games into the year, we saw the Clippers make that big trade for James Harden. So far, they're 6-8, 11th in the Western Conference. And, of course, they got off to that, infamous winless start with James Harden. And just how do you think so far things are transpiring with the LA Clippers? And what do you think their outlook is for this season with James Harden on their team now?
They're doomed to fail. They've got the Avengers. They've got the Avengers of unlikable misfit characters who can't win in the postseason. So I think they've really built an incredible roster of players who are not going to succeed in the playoffs. We got Pandemic P, James Harden, Westbrook. I like Kawhi, but the rest of them, that's not going to work out, and it's doomed to fail.
Well, Pat, I really like Kawhi Leonard too. Guys on this show, they tease me a lot for my pipe dream of having Kawhi Leonard on the Atlanta Hawks. Any chance that we could see a fire sale from the Clippers? And what do you think of the prospects of Kawhi Leonard potentially being in Atlanta?
I would love it. I can't really imagine it happening because, our front office and our ownership, they seem to be immune. They seem to be allergic to going into the luxury tax. So adding a big star, an all-star caliber player would, just blow it wide open. So I can't imagine that happening. I would love it, though. I love Kawhi. He's the only redeeming character on the LA Clippers for me personally. But you know what? Keep that dream alive, and we're going to try to speak it into existence.
Absolutely, Pat, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much for being on the GB3 show, man.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you, Pat.
Thank y'all for having me. Keep doing your thing. I really love your show.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. You take care.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Garrett, you heard what my man Pat said, right?
Yeah, okay.
He loved that Kawhi Leonard idea. I love it too, Mr. Benson. I love it too, man.
Yeah, but, like I said, if Kawhi Leonard were ever to stay healthy, then, like I said, I'll be all for it. So, yeah, when we come back, apparently Josh Giddey, I'm not sure what the man is doing, but apparently
averaging 12
he is under investigation with having some sort of interactions with a underage girl. So we'll talk about that before we close the show out. So keep it locked right here on ATL Talks Radio. This is the GB3 show. We are back on to the GB3 show. It is 9:48, so it's almost 10 o'clock. So, yeah, we cover a lot of great things this morning. And, so if you're tuning into the GB3 show, make sure that you tune in on ATLTalks Radio. You can tune into the station on iHeartRadio or download the ATLTalks Radio app for your mobile devices on the App Store or on Google Play. And if you do have an iPhone and you're in your car, you can tune into ATLTalks Radio on Apple CarPlay. So, right now, Oklahoma City Thunder, Josh Giddey is currently under investigation by the league because it appears that he may have had an inappropriate relationship with a minor that emerged on social media. Sean Charnia was the first to report it. And I saw the pictures myself, and old girl, she looked pretty young. Let me just say that first. And obviously we don't know the details of the situation, but just from the pictures that emerged on social media on X, as I said, the chick, she looks pretty young, and she posted some comments where it's like, okay, what were they, what kind of relationship were they having? And of course, for all the people that have seen it, you know exactly what we're talking about. But I gotta be honest with you, man, if this stuff happens to be true, this is not a good look for Josh Giddey, because look, Josh Giddey, he is a really good player. He's a really good young player, and I want to see him to continue to succeed in the league. I think he's in a good situation where he's at with OKC, because this is a young team that's on the come up for sure. They off to a great start this year, but as far as what kind of consequences and things of that nature that Josh Giddey could face, I mean, at the very least, we could see a multi-game suspension, can you say the word, and on top of a fine. But, I mean, Jerome thinks he could possibly get kicked out of the league.
Yeah, look, because according to, the photos and the video, there's one video with the caption, it read, "I just effed Josh Giddey." And the woman in question is rumored to be 15 years old. And depending on the nature of this relationship, it could just be a thing where Josh may just be like, I thought she was 18. She said she was 18 type stuff. Or if it's more serious than that and he knew of her age before going into it, then I don't know how the man could maybe he won't get locked up. But, because apparently the age of consent in Oklahoma is a lot lower than you would expect. But even if he doesn't get locked up, I don't know how the league could just let the man continue on like that and to continue just to being on a team after having it known that, he's sleeping around with underage women. It's a really bad look, and if I was the Thunder right now, they're still having him out there doing press conferences. The last press conference, he essentially just said, hey, no comment right now on the situation, which is probably the best thing he could do. But if I was the Thunder, I would just kind of handle it by just dismissing him from the team until this whole thing gets resolved or until the NBA completes its investigation. So if you were an owner of the OKC Thunder, like, how would you handle this? Because this is a very sticky situation, and it has a potential to get really ugly really fast, depending on what the NBA finds out.
In situations like this, you want to keep it under wraps as best as possible, keep everything confidential. Obviously, with the pictures on social media, of course, you can't undo that type of thing because it's already been posted for people to see. But in regards to getting the truth out until the situation is fully under investigation, which it is, but you want to keep things confidential for the time being. So, I mean, in my case, I may or may not dismiss Josh. It just depends on what I know internally. If it's where, okay, this girl is certainly underage and he's had an inappropriate relationship, then yeah, I would certainly dismiss him. But if it's where it's a he say, she say type of thing and we don't know exactly the truth, then I may not dismiss him. I'll allow him to continue to play because OKC, they're off of a great start. So you may not want to risk that. But like I said, we won't know anything until further notice, but in this case, I will continue to allow him to play for the time being.
And that's a good point you bring up. At the very least, we have to find out exactly what the scenario is, because you never know how things could happen. You know, it could just be where she was just lying or embellishing something, and all these allegations are all for naught. But right now, when a situation like this, you really don't know the information you have present. I'm not sure if having him go out there and do media is the best thing, but maybe if they decided to kind of try to hide him away, that would make him seem a bit more guilty. So it's possible that they just decided, hey, let him go out there, face this head on. And in doing that, it may just kind of just temper down people thinking the worst kind of things. And, it'll be just interesting to see what happens in the upcoming weeks. We've only known about this story for about 3 days. There's just a lot of information going out there. We don't know what's true, what isn't true. I don't even think the age of the woman has been confirmed quite yet. Yeah. So, we'll just kind of see how that plays out. Definitely OKC is going to monitor what goes on. And I'm just hoping for the best,
Absolutely.
Really.
Hopefully he's innocent, hopefully. But there's always an if he's not. But my goodness, I just hope this isn't true. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
but
that's a real bummer. What a bad way to start your Thanksgiving if you're Josh Giddey, isn't it?
My gosh, yeah. I mean, it could turn into a complete mess. But thank you for everyone who's tuning in with us this morning. Make sure that you tune into the GB3 show every Saturday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern time. And again, you can download the ATLTalks radio app for your mobile devices on the App Store or on Google Play, or you can just simply tune into the station on iHeartRadio. So again, thank you everyone who's tuning with us this morning, and we will see you guys 9 a.m. next week.
Peace.